Thank you for tuning in to part 2 of my interview with the co-founder of SparkToro, Rand Fishkin. If you accidentally skipped part 1 and want to get to know Rand more personally, go back an episode where we explore Rand's thoughts on issues that impact our human experience both within and beyond the world of business. In this second part, we get into Rand's ideas for business growth strategies with bigger payoffs, so you know where to focus your marketing efforts and which channels may actually be cannibalizing your profits. To get the transcript, show notes, and more for both parts of this interview, head over to leadpages.com/podcast. Now, let's get back into it. So let's change gears now towards your zone of entrepreneurial genius, which is around the areas of developing better marketing, being a better marketer, being smarter about audience research, things like that. You started up SEO Moz over 20 years ago now, or about that time frame, and you've now been with SparkToro a few years with Casey Henry. What would you say has been some of those like really seismic or maybe minor but significant shifts in the digital marketing landscape that maybe have surprised you or maybe has just caught your attention that you think our listeners should be paying attention to today?
Ooh, yeah. Let's see. So some recent ones I think are, well, we talked about a few together in Victoria, but yeah, one of the ones that I think is particularly salient, this was commented on by and written about by my colleague, Amanda Natividad, but she coined this phrase, zero-click content. Essentially that all of the major platforms that control most of our time spent online, YouTube, Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, you name it, the overwhelming majority of content that performs well on those platforms is platform native. So essentially, if you want to do well on LinkedIn, you need to post something that keeps people on LinkedIn and keeps them engaged there. Gets lots of comments and shares and likes and reactions. The same is true on Facebook. The same is true on Instagram. In fact, Instagram and TikTok, it's nearly impossible to even get someone to leave the site, right? The same is becoming true on Google, right? That Google's instant answers and featured snippets and, putting results right in the answer box before you get to the search results. All of that stuff is designed to keep you on Google, to get your answer from Google rather than getting it from the third-party website where Google scraped it from. And that is frustrating for a lot of marketers, especially marketers who over the last 15, 20 years have been trained that the way we're supposed to use platforms is to draw traffic to our sites and then be able to see it in our analytics, look at the referral string, attribute that to a platform that we participated in. Hey, boss, look, we did a lot of LinkedIn investments over the last quarter. You can see that we got this many signups, we got this many visits, all that kind of stuff. What's much tougher is saying, hey, we did a lot over the last quarter, boss, but I can't show you any traffic that came from LinkedIn, even though we know that a lot of people saw us on LinkedIn and they probably searched for us in Google and then they came to our website. But yeah, I guess Google's going to get all the credit for that. And probably our paid ads are going to get credit because we buy the paid ads for our own brand name so that no one else can rank in there. It's all this kind of BS. So I think this whole shift to zero-click content and away from attribution is a huge change that's going to take at least another 5 or 6 years to really settle in. And my suspicion is that for some people, it never will, right? They're always going to be addicted to paying the ad platforms to be able to get that traffic so that they can measure and attribute, sort of more perfectly.
Awesome. I was going to ask you, how do you think this answer of yours would change in 5 years? But it sounds like that's what's going to continue to happen. Do you have other thoughts around that?
Yeah, in 5 years, it's tough to say, Bob, right? Like 5 years is both a short time and a lifetime in internet marketing. So right. my suspicion is there's one of two possibilities that happen. One is something like Senator Amy Klobuchar's bill passes Congress. It looks unlikely this right now, but it is possible if the Dems don't lose seats in November, that it would come back on the table. But so this is the bill that prevents platform self-preferencing, right? For Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple. And if a bill like that one or anything like it, it's also sponsored by Chuck Grassley from the Republicans. So like it's one of the few things where Republicans and Democrats in the US Congress agrees. It massively changes what might happen where essentially Google couldn't put Google Maps at the top of all the Google local results, right? And local searches. They couldn't put Google Flights whenever you search for flights. They couldn't put, the Google App Store at the top when you Google Play Store, right? When you search for applications. Apple would have the same thing in their app store. Amazon would have the same thing in Amazon's results. They couldn't put, Amazon made products above everyone else's. And that could significantly shift the sort of zero-click content, zero-click searches problem and open that back up. I mean, you can imagine that the amount of economic activity that reopens for society is just massive. Content creators, marketers, digital marketing folks would just have an incredible opportunity over the next few years to go execute in all these spaces that have essentially been closed off. I mean, lyrics, videos, weather, even like recommended TV shows. Google has these answers that they scrape. I just think there's a ton of opportunity there. But if we don't see something like that, probably this zero-click trend continues, right? And problem likely gets more pervasive over time, not less. I think there's varying opinions about whether government action is warranted or a good thing here. I personally believe it is. I think that we should be trying to fairly apply antitrust laws, but I think reasonable people can disagree. I think there are some arguments to be made that this is convenient for consumers, and so who cares if it stifles innovation? I think that's the crux of whether in 5 years this is, still a huge thing or whether it's dissipated.
Yeah, it is a very fascinating time that we're in, where those things can go in either direction, and they might even go forward and backward, in fits and starts over that same time period. It's a very strange time in the world of tech, privacy, and what's efficient and convenient versus monopolistic and costly in the long run. So I think we could probably spend a whole hour just on that topic by itself, right? Now, you mentioned a few things that I think the terminology of which would be helpful to break down for our listeners, some of whom might be new to the three categories that you talk a lot about, which is paid media, earned media, and owned media. Can you talk about what those three things are and what's kind of your view on the trends of which is increasingly more important for our audience to be paying attention to?
Sure. I think the frustrating part, Bob, when it comes to this, and I don't often use this terminology because I think that the Venn diagram of what it means when who's talking about it can vary. So, for example, some people would say that when they say paid media, usually you mean all types of advertising that you might pay for. But some people are like, oh, well, I really think of paid media more like my performance advertising. And I think brand advertising is a different thing. I sort of classify that differently. So, for example, let's say you want to sponsor a conference or event. Is that fundamentally quite different in your goal and how you're going to measure it and the value that you get from spending $50,000 on your Google Ads campaign? I'd argue it is, right? Probably very different in terms of how you measure it, what you consider success metrics, what you're trying to accomplish with those two things. Like, they're pretty darn different. They get looped in. Are they both technically paid media? Yes. Is the distinction, the umbrella distinction of paid media helpful? Maybe. I don't know. It depends on who you are. Earned media. So this is the same sort of thing. PR usually is the one that people mention the most in earned media, right? There's essentially like, hey, the newspaper wrote about us. CNN had a thing on us. We got coverage in an industry trade journal. A blog wrote about us. Oh, wait a minute. Are blogs earned media? I don't really think of them as media. They're more like niche media. I don't know if I count that. I think we should call that organic. Let's put that in the SEO bucket. What? Again, right? So it bleeds over into different places. Measurement is totally different, right? If you are, I don't know, if your company gets mentioned on Last Week Tonight, most of the time when companies get mentioned on Last Week Tonight, it's in a negative way, but maybe you got mentioned in a positive way. Happened to us once. And in that case, that's earned media, right? Would you measure that the same way that you'd measure like, oh, G2 Reviews said something nice about our software in their market segmentation? Yeah, I guess those are both earned media, but again, it's so different. And then the same with owned, right? Owned media would be like your email newsletter or your social media. Some people would argue that your social media maybe doesn't constitute owned because you don't technically own the platform, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's earned media. So this is why these distinctions are really, really funny. But the way I think about it is, depending on who you are, your job is to build a great marketing flywheel. It can involve a combination of techniques that overlap owned, earned, and paid. You don't need to make the distinction if you don't want to, if it's not valuable to you. I think maybe it's more a tool for marketing professors and teachers to like show what channels are possible than it is a marketing practitioner's playbook obligation to put different things into these specific buckets and categorize them. I'm not really sure what the value of labeling things into these is for a practitioner.
That clarifies it 0%, but it does give us a lot of things to think about, and I love it because it's real, right? It's the practical opportunity for people to not feel like they have to choose one or the other, but to be measuring, to be executing, and paying attention to what's working for them, right?
Yeah. You go find the combination of tactics and channels that reaches your audience, that resonates with them, that helps you share your message in the right kind of ways, and that has results. And if that is a combination of things that overlap into these multiple buckets, great. That sounds pretty good to me. Do you need to tag them? I don't know. Does your boss make you tag them? Like maybe you do, but I certainly don't, right? When SparkToro does what one person would call earned and another person would call owned and, maybe falls into paid, I don't even bother. I don't think about that. I just think about, okay, is this reaching our audience in the places where they pay attention with the message that's going to resonate in a way that maybe has serendipitous measurement or is impossible to measure, but I can show lift over time. Great, fantastic. I'm going to do it.
Cool. We're going to talk about more of that measuring idea in just a second, I think, to dig into that. But one area that is, kind of traditionally called owned media is that email list that you mentioned. Obviously, here at Leadpages, we're huge fans of building up an email list. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist. Tell us a little bit about your view on email list building. Where is it rank in your mind for the average entrepreneur,
It's the best
small
one.
business owner?
I mean, look,
what's that?
You don't have to try and convince anyone, right? Like Leadpages, it doesn't matter who you are. Email is the absolute best thing that you can do. It's better than even a website visit. If someone has opted into saying, I want to give you my email address and I would like you to send me your content. That's like the absolute pinnacle of marketing before the conversion happens. No doubt about it. There's just nothing else compares. Look at the open rates of emails over the last 20 years, right? You can go to MailChimp. They've got a nice breakdown where they show, email open rates and click-through rates, and they've barely changed in 20 years, which is absolutely incredible. Because if you look at Facebook engagement rate per post, for example, which was at 7 or 8% in like 2010, and then it fell by 2013 or 14, it fell to about 2% and then 1%. And today it is 0.09%. That was what Rival IQ calculated in 2022. What are you talking? So you're telling me that less than 1 in 1,000 people who I could possibly send my Facebook post to will engage with it, but 22% of people who receive my email are likely to open it? I'd rather have one email address than 1,000 more Facebook followers, or Twitter followers where the rates are just as low, or Instagram followers where they're a little bit higher, but nothing close. They're still less than a 50th of email, or TikTok fans, or whatever it is. Email is superior to all of them. It's superior because you can do so much with an email address that you can't do with any other social platform, right? So you can take an email address and you can reach out directly individually to a person. You can take an email address and you can put it into full contact or Clearbit, and you can get all of this rich data about the person behind the email. You can put an email just into your LinkedIn and you could connect with that person on LinkedIn and you can see their bio and what they do. And just infinite amount of value from an email versus a social follow or a website visit where you can know less and less and you can't cookie people anymore and you can't track them over time anymore. It's just email is that's the gold standard.
won't get any disagreement from me on any of that for sure.
I think it'd be hilarious if you fought with me and you were like, well.
Hey, it's Laura from the Leadpages team. Has this episode inspired you to ramp up your online marketing? Well, you're in luck, because we have a special offer for our podcast listeners that will help you make your dream a reality. Get 30% off Leadpages when you start your free trial today. Build high-converting websites and landing pages, promote your special offers with pop-ups and alert bars, and track your results with in-depth analytics. Go to leadpages.com/TLG30 to save 30% and start building your business. That's leadpages.com/TLG30 to get the deal before time expires. Now back to Bob for the second half of the episode.
Well, speaking of contrarians, though, one of the things I love about your presentation you did was this contrarian view that you have developed over the last few years of looking at this pedestal that Google and Facebook happen to be on when it comes to traffic, paid media, etc. You called it a duopoly of epic proportions or something of that nature. And I think it would be super helpful for you to share your parable of the pizzeria story that I'm sure you picked up from somewhere, but tell us a little bit about why that's an important story to understand when it comes to the over-reliance on paid media in regards to Google and Facebook particularly.
Sure. So I mean, the pizzeria story kind of fits in around this idea of incremental lift versus attribution. So, for example, Bob, right? Like, I'll tell the story and then we can talk about it a little more. So, story in brief, short version is pizzeria owner decides that she wants to get more business for a pizzeria. So she hires 3 local neighborhood scamps and they come to the store. She gives them flyers, a green one, a red one, and a white one. The flyers have, the pizzeria's menu and its location and a discount code, a unique discount code. So she can track like, oh, okay, the kid with the white flyer is doing great, or the kid with red flyer is doing great. And over the next month, she watches and like 70% of the people coming in with flyers are using the green flyer. So she fires the other 2 kids and she says, okay, green flyer kid, like keep distributing. You're doing a great job. Tons of people coming into the pizzeria over the next 6 months with the green flyer. And then she talks to her accountant, and the accountant says, well, your pizzeria is doing okay. Sales are up about 7-8%, but, you got a lot of people using the discount code, so your profit margins are coming down, and you're barely breaking even on this thing. And the pizzeria owner thinks, what? How could this be possible? Well, I see, at least a third of our customers, maybe even more, are coming in with the green flyer. How could it be that business is only up 7 or 8%? Are we losing all our other customers? I don't understand. So what does she do? She puts on a disguise. She follows the kid. He takes his green flyers in the morning. She puts on a disguise. She follows him. She sees him. He goes, ducks into the alley behind the pizzeria. And anytime he sees anyone who looks like they're coming toward the pizzeria, he jumps out and hands them the flyer. Because why would you work hard to make more sales when you could just take credit for the sales that were already going to happen? AKA Facebook and Google's motto. The fundamental problem with a ton of paid advertising of all kinds is that the platform's incentive is to give you proof, right, that you can take to your boss, your team, your client, if you're an agency, that shows, hey, the leads that we got, the sales that we got, you can see that they had view through conversions this many times across Facebook's ad network, across YouTube's ad network, across Google's ad network, across TikTok's ad network. And so they are getting the credit. Are they making a new sale, a sale that would not have existed? There's no way to know unless you turn off your ads. And virtually no advertiser is willing to take the risk of losing business over the next quarter or 6 months because every quarter's results are so critical and important. My God, what if we shut off our ads and we lose 7% of our business? Well, if you were spending like you were getting 40% of your business from ads, you've won. Your profit margins just skyrocketed. You've lost 7% of your business and you have gained a massive amount of margin and a huge amount of profit you've been wasting. And you can take that money and put it into other forms of marketing that, in my opinion, will have a better return. but almost no one is willing to take this risk. That's the fundamental lesson that I take away from the parable.
That's so fascinating to me. And I think the challenge that we've been hearing within our team as we discuss this is probably the most talked about point after you're talking, Victoria, with us, was what do we do with this? Like, how do we turn it off, have the faith that it could work and so forth? For the entrepreneur who is going to hear this and think, maybe they can do this as an experiment as well. Maybe they've allocated $500, $1,000 towards a paid media budget for the next couple of weeks in this area of not that, but into how do we get more earned media? How do we get more exposure in different places? How could they better allocate those funds in a way that tests out this theory for themselves?
I mean, this is tough because most of the best ways to invest in digital marketing outside of the ad platforms requires human effort, creativity, thoughtfulness, careful audience research, content creation, social media, PR, email, channels that very frankly, you can't just throw money at them and then get a return, right? The ease, the convenience of I put money into my Google Ads account, I put money into my Facebook Ads account, I put money at TikTok, and then they say I got this many visits and this much traffic and this many conversions. Who am I to question these results, right? That mindset that people get locked into of pay money, get results, see tracking is not available in the high quality areas of marketing that I often espouse and talk about. So if you're going to go market through your customers' sources of influence and think to yourself, okay, I know that my customers, there's 5 publications in our field that are very popular, right? They're read by 10% or more of all of my identifiable potential customer targets. How am I going to do something that gets them to editorially endorse, feature, talk about me and my product, me and my company? Well, and now the list is infinitely long, right? The list of potential ideas is infinitely long. Well, they do have a podcast. Maybe I could get an introduction to them on the podcast. And I've got this interesting, short form video that I put on Twitter. And maybe if they see that, then they'll be like, yeah, come on as a guest and talk about that thing. Because it really resonated with, okay, that's one idea. Maybe I could be a guest author for them in their editorial section. Maybe, they're running a conference or event. I wonder if I could be a speaker for them. Gosh, I wonder if we could publish some research together or, whatever. That list is very long, but there's no amount of money that you can pay to just solve the problem. And I think this is the other holdup that a ton of people have is they are not willing to invest because it is hard to achieve. It is not reliable. You can't just, hey, we're going to take this $1,000 and we're going to put it toward 1/8 of a creative person's salary for the month and let's see what they can do. You can't do it that way. That's not a reason. You can't hire a 1/8 time Rand Fishkin or Amanda Natividad to go do, creative source of influence marketing for you. It's a long-term investment. You're probably going to make a hire or work with an agency, and the first 3 to 6 months are going to be really frustrating and you're not going to see results. And then slowly you're going to start, okay, we found a thing that works for us. It really works when we find, people with YouTube channels because we can do this special thing with YouTube channels and video. Oh, okay. We figured out how to do that with short form video too. So now Instagram and TikTok sources of influence work well for us. Oh, and gosh, actually we do some Wistia video stuff on our own website. And then, we can get that into Google's results sometimes. And now we're getting this flywheel going. And that took 18 months. It took 18 months and $180,000. And you're getting 10 times the payback and the ROI that you were from, your Facebook and Google ad spend. But man, so much more valuable. It just took a ton of time and energy and effort to lean into.
And for those that feel like that time frame is difficult for them, other than the payoff is the payoff, how else do you work with clients or people that you talk to around events that you go to get them to be willing to take that leap?
I would say there's 2 strategies that are sometimes successful for folks. One is we can dip our toe in, we can try a few things and we can see how they perform by looking at the branded search lift that we see. So for example, let's say you have a social media strategy. You're going to go do a lot of content creation, 0-click type of content creation for social media platforms to get your brand out there and to find a message that resonates with your audience. And you do a lot of stuff in B2B world. That's mostly Twitter and LinkedIn. In consumer, it might be more TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And then you're going to measure, okay, we expect that branded search traffic, given the last 3 years of history, would look like this. But instead, we see, it was even higher in June than we expected, even higher in July than we expected, 26% up in August over what we would have predicted year to year based on the trajectory. Okay, you know what? This social strategy, even though we can't see any of the clicks, we know that a ton of those people must be coming from Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and searching Google and then coming to our website. Okay, we can make this investment. So that's kind of the dip your toe in the water, measure, show results, have improvement method. The other way that I've seen people convince bosses and teams is with competition. Hey, boss, our competitor's doing this thing. What? Outrageous. Why aren't we doing that thing? Do that thing. Ta-da. For some reason, there's like this competitive streak in entrepreneurial ventures and business in general, especially in the United States. And so that often is a really good trigger to get people to go after it. I suspect it works a little less well in Canada and probably a little less well in Australia, New Zealand, and not nearly as well in Europe. But, it's kind of a cultural thing.
I love this idea of being able to measure the brand lift. I know for many marketers, they have been beaten over the head with ROAS and all these other KPIs. Going a step further, besides the brand lift, are you looking at just like overall revenue numbers quarter over quarter? Are you looking at like a tabulation of appearances, mentions, and things like that? Obviously, we're going to talk about SparkToro specifically in just a second, but how else would you like help convince the folks that it is successful, that what they have been doing has been? So let me step back. Yeah. They've made the choice to do it. Right. Now they want to measure the success of it. Besides that brand lift, what else might you and the people that you have advised measure that they made the right choice?
Look, if you're sort of a long-term believer in this stuff, you can be like me and not even bother. I frankly think it is mostly a waste of time to prove to myself that something that I know works. Like, I just know it works. I do it. I see the results. I'm not worried about it. I like spending time on this stuff anyway. I know that people get engaged and hear the message and then it resonates. And if they happen to become SparkToro customers, beautiful. And if they don't, that's great too. And that philosophy probably is actually more effective than the, gosh, how do I get people to the website to try the free version and then sign up with their email? And right. So look, sometimes weirdly enough, serendipitous belief works better than intentional effort to get a conversion. But if you don't have that mental model and you can't get your boss or team there, my recommendation is you can measure sort of 3 ways. So you can measure what are called vanity metrics. So this is essentially like how many followers, how many likes, retweets, shares, impressions across all of the posts, across all the channels where we do it. Visits, if you're doing, blog posts or content pieces. If you're working with a third party and you're doing impressions on their site, how well does it rank in Google for specific keywords, right? So sort of vanity, top level, very, very high top of funnel. Then the second thing you can look at is branded search, visits with no attribution. So dark traffic, right? Type in, referral, direct. Facebook sent the visit, but they don't want to tell you they sent the visit because it came organically, and Facebook would really prefer that you just pay them, and Google is the same way, right? So all of that. And underneath that one, email subscribers. So if you have an email list, right, that is sort of more content focused and more sort of middle of funnel, that's a great one to measure as well. And you look at lift across these, or whatever you're investing in. If you have a podcast series, you could look at listens and downloads. If you have a video series, you could look at the views on YouTube, right? So it's all that top level stuff. And then you try and track that to, well, did our conversion rate go up? Did our total number of conversions go up? Did our loyalty from existing customers go up? Did our average sale or order size go up? And those are sort of metrics where the leading metrics tend to map to them. So you can't see people who came to us from Twitter, had this many conversions. Not possible. But you can see, we had lots more impressions on Twitter this quarter than last quarter. And we also had quite a bit more email signups this quarter than last quarter. And then 3 quarters from now, we can see that many of the people who became email subscribers ended up becoming customers. Oh, got it. Long lead cycle. This is the path that we can follow. Here's how we can measure and build a metrics driven organization around that. Yeah, you can do it. Bob, frankly, I don't, it's weird to say this is possible. Many people have to do it. I think you have even better results if you don't bother.
Just the mental anguish that it can eliminate,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, because
can help
right,
free
what
up
happens?
creativity, right?
Yeah, like every time you walk into the boardroom and you're like, well, we didn't do as well with our LinkedIn impressions this quarter. They're like, shut it down, throw the money at Facebook. Like it's just silliness, right? To have to make the case all the time, and you know that when it comes to creativity and content and social and PR and email and channels that are difficult to measure, that are more serendipitous, the reality is absolutely the case that you will have wins and losses. You will have times when, oh man, I sent this one tweet, I put up this one video, and my God, it just went crazy. It did so well. I never expected it. And then the next 20 times you're like just beating your head against the wall. None of these blog posts are working. None of these tweets are working. None of these LinkedIn posts are working. These videos aren't doing well. I didn't do a great job on that podcast. It turned out the host didn't have near the distribution we thought they'd. That's going to happen a ton of times too. So this is a long-term believe in it investment. You know what it's more like? It's more like thinking about the relationship with your customers the way you think about relationships with friends, family, and partners, right? I didn't stay up late doing all the dishes last night and cleaning the kitchen because I expected a conversion event, however you might define that, right? I did it because I am investing long-term. I'm going to clean the kitchen with, who knows if Geraldine will even notice that I cleaned the kitchen. Usually she does, and she's very sweet about it, right? But like, she did the laundry a couple of days ago, right? Like it's just reciprocal. It's a relationship that you're investing in for the long term, and it has extraordinary results, and there's no measurement. When you start to measure it, you start to pollute it. I did the dishes 20 times, over the last month. You only did the laundry 3 times. This relationship isn't fair. I'm afraid we're going to have to renegotiate the contract. Screw that. Throw that crap out the window. And if you view relationships the way you view business, you're going to have a bad time. But if you view business the way you view relationships, you might have a beautiful time.
I just want to let that sink in, because that's really an important takeaway, I think, for people to hear. And it's, again, difficult to convince people of until they see it, right? And then it's magical.
Yeah.
Awesome. My final question to you involves this idea of, you mentioned a few minutes ago about customers' spheres of influence and how important it is to really be looking for that opportunity. Yeah. So I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about how does SparkToro take what would normally be the drudgery of market research and scraping the internet for avid places to go, and just basically hand it to people on a little bit of a shinier platter.
Yeah. So, a lot of the times when you're trying to figure out, hey, where should we go, amplify this message or tell this story or, share our content or whatever it is, that's a hard problem to solve. You could do surveys and interviews, but they often don't reveal like which podcast do my customers listen to, what YouTube channels do they subscribe to, which Twitter accounts do they follow, who do they follow on Instagram, what groups are they part of on LinkedIn, where can I reach, which subreddits are they subscribed to, all those kinds of questions, what hashtags they use, are frustrating to get answers to through any traditional means. And so what we saw some smart businesses doing was, they'd have like 2 software engineers build a system to basically crawl all the profiles of their customers and potential customers. So they take an email newsletter list, they'd feed it through Clearbit or Full Contact or something like that. And then they would take all the social URLs that they produced, they'd have the engineers crawl all of those, and then they'd look at everything they followed, everything they shared, everything they liked, everything that they, all the hashtags they used in their posts, and then aggregate that and say, okay, 17% of our email list follows this particular account. This website, when it was shared, got this much engagement from 11% of our audience. Let's go do our marketing there. And Casey and I were like, dear God, are you kidding me? This like, 2 six-figure salaries for 6 months to be able to produce this one report. Let's just build that for the whole internet and you can get it for like $50 a month, right? Like we should just make that possible for anyone to do. And so that's what SparkToro is, right? You basically can go and say, my audience follows our social account, or my audience uses the hashtag fly fishing, or my audience uses these words in their profile, interior designers, and they're located in California. Boom. Okay. 17% subscribe to Arconnect Sessions podcast. That's the one. I want to be on that one, right? And then there's a big old list of 50 more of them that, are potential targets. And for whatever kind of marketing that you're trying to do, that's what we're trying to solve. SparkToro is not the only place you can get this. If you have a big budget, Brandwatch has got a great product for this. If you are looking for more direct competitors to SparkToro, a service called Audience with an S, like audience, but with an S instead of a C. And then Helixa.ai. You can use SimilarWeb. Even the free version of SimilarWeb does some of these things kind of on the clickstream data, so a little different versus the social web. But even if you just do it manually, go to Google and look up the top, podcasts for architects. What are architects listening to? And you probably find some. The data won't be as good. You won't get the percentages, but you can do this. It's better than doing nothing.
Awesome. Well, Rand, it's really been a pleasure to have the opportunity to chat with you today. We covered a range of topics. I really enjoyed every bit of it. I'm looking forward to seeing what continues for you and the SparkToro team, as well as your family, of course. Thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Bob. Thanks for having me. Take care.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Lead Generation Podcast from Leadpages. Take a moment now to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. Then head over to leadpages.com/podcast for show notes, bonus resources, and more ways to elevate your business. Thanks for listening.